folks, Scott here with my 10 cards, one kit video featuring the Love From Lizi March 2021 Make It Bloom card kit. This is our big spring card kit for this year with features of Easter and gardening and a huge collection of coordinated supplies. I do always make my 10 card bases. These are all A2 card bases, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I make those from the 5 card stocks that Lizi includes in the kit. I do swap out Lizi's super smooth white alcohol friendly card stock for some of my plain 110-pound card stock. And I set Lizi's white cardstock aside to save for my alcohol marker coloring. Now this kit featured a bunch of cut-apart sheets that make it really easy to create lovely, useful cards. I couldn't resist this one. If friends were flowers, I'd pick you. That's always a great sentiment, and I do love this plaid watering can on this dark background. This cut apart is from one of our 6 by 8 inch pattern paper pieces. I matted that onto a thin white mat, and then I matted that on a nice thicker mat of that matching pattern paper with all the flowers on that. I added another thin white mat just for good measure behind that, glued that all down to my white card base, and then I added the Hello wood veneer die cut to the top here. I did add a little sparkle to that with my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen. That's the only sparkle on this card. A really nice sentiment. If friends were flowers, I'd pick you. Now there are 8 cut apart pieces this exact same size in our card kit. You could easily make 8 cards from those cut aparts right there. Now there was one other cut apart that really caught my eye this month. We've got You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. Another great cut-apart piece from our pattern paper. Now, instead of just cutting this out, I did use one of my tonic scallop square dies to cut this out. I just did some partial die cutting. I cut the first half of this on one side, then matched it up and cut it on the other side. You can always cut out rectangles with your square dies if you use partial die cutting. So I added a nice cute little itty bitty scallop border on my cut apart and matted that on a thin white mat. Now, I stamped this little garland. This is using all 11 of the little bitty stamps in our stamp set. I stamped all of these with Versamark, and I embossed them all with the Love From Lizi Baby Blue Party Embossing Powder. This stuff is sparkle, sparkle, sparkle. Look at how much sparkle that gives those great stamps. Well, I dug around in my stash looking for some cardstock that actually matched that Baby Blue Party embossing powder. I finally came upon this. This is actually a Hero Hughes Periwinkle cardstock. So I added a thin mat of that. I glued those all together and mounted that to the warm yellow card base using some foam tape. I did spray my main panel here down with some sheer shimmer spritz just to give it all a little bit of sparkle. I think you can see that there. A few sequins from our kit, including a couple of the iridescent hearts on the cheeks of the sun, and we've got a nice You Are My Sunshine card. I really like that little garland of all our leaves, hearts, and flowers on the top and bottom there. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. Now, I do challenge myself to use all of the stamps in our stamp sets when I do these 10 card videos, and we have 5 sentiment stamps in this stamp set, so let's look at some of those sentiments. This is on the lilac card base, and we've got Spring is in the air. Scatter seeds of happiness. Isn't that nice? I really like this card. Thematically, I think it's right on the money. I cut a 3 1/4 inch by 5 1/2 inch piece of that seed pattern paper, glued that down to my lilac card base. I did add a couple of pieces of peel-offs to the top and bottom of that. This is the mauve moon dust peel-offs that came in the pinstripe peel-off pack that was an add-on for this kit. I cut out 6 of these little seed packets from the leftovers of my pattern paper and added those on top of their matching seed packets on the card front here. I stamped "The Spring is in the Air" on a scrap of white cardstock. I stamped that using Versamark ink and dug through my stash to find an embossing powder that actually matched the pattern paper. The closest I could come was this Pink Sparkle embossing powder. This came in the Hero Arts January 2020 kit. I don't think they sell it regularly, but it's got some nice sparkle to it, nice and pink. It actually matches up with this pattern paper really nicely. I don't know if the camera's catching that, but in person, those two look very, very similar. I die cut that stamped sentiment with a little Hero Arts Nesting Infinity die, glued that to a piece of black cardstock, and just fussy cut that really thin border around that. The seed and the sentiment are both from the sticker sheet. I added black mats behind them, trimmed those down, added all those pieces with foam tape to the front of this card. Spring is in the air, scatter seeds of happiness. I did cover all of my seed packets, the ones that are popped up, with some Spectrum Noir sparkle pin, a little bit of glitter on all of those seed packets to match that fun glittery sentiment right there. Spring is in the air, scatter seeds of happiness. I really like that sentiment. Scatter seeds of happiness. My, how appropriate. Now, we actually have two Happy Easter sentiments in our stamp set. So let's get with some holiday cards here. This again is on the warm yellow card base, and we've got Happy Easter on this bright yellow card. This kind of feels like a big Easter basket to me. I stamped and embossed the square Happy Easter sentiment on this little tag from our ephemera pieces. I embossed that with the Love From Lizi Forest Green embossing powder. I really like that embossing powder. It's really nice and shiny, very, very smooth. I matched that up with this other ephemera piece. This was the ephemera piece that had the little bow on the top of that. I added a pink gingham mat behind that ephemera piece, stacked these all together, poked a hole right through the center, and tied this nice triple bow here using the pink, yellow, and blue ribbons in our kit. Nice big bow on the top of this. I did stamp my little garland of little stamps on the side of this card base. I stamped that with Versamark ink and then used that Pink Sparkle embossing powder again. It reads a little bit differently on this yellow card front, but I think it works just as well. Happy Easter. Finally, we needed another touch on this card, so I dug out our chick and Easter egg die from our embellishment bag. I die cut our chickens and our eggs from the pearlescent cardstock add-on pack. All of these pieces are mounted with foam tape. I added a couple of little strips of that pink gingham just for a finishing touch. Happy Easter, nice and shiny with all those chicks and eggs and that sentiment. And I really like these long tails on the bow. It feels very Easter to me. Don't ask me why. We also have a jump into spring sentiment in our stamp set, and what better way to illustrate that sentiment than with a bunny? Unfortunately, we have this fun bunny sticker in our kit. Jump into spring. I really like this. I stamped and embossed this sentiment on this ephemera tag, again using that forest green embossing powder. That works really good with the dark greens in this kit. That forest green embossing powder is kind of perfect. I cut a piece of the yellow daisy pattern paper to 3 1/4 inches wide by 4 1/2 inches tall. I die cut the bunny border on the top using the die from our kit and partial die cutting, so I didn't cut the bottom of the bunnies out. They made this nice little line, this lovely decorative border to our pattern paper. I thought that worked very nicely. It was a really cute die. I die cut a piece of this dark green cardstock from my stash with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I glued that down to the zesty lime green card base, and then I added that yellow pattern paper with the bunny border onto that. I mounted our little label with some foam tape onto the front of the card, and then de-stickified my bunny sticker and added him with more foam tape. This still needed a little bit more, so I took some more of that yellow pattern paper and I die cut these 3 flowers with that. I used our large flower die in our kit and that smaller flower die to make the center of the flowers. I actually cut the purple part here out of the end tab of our mauve moon dust peel off. So here, right here, you can see that. There's some nice real estate that you can get on the edges of your peel offs here. Both ends of them are actually die cuttable. So I die cut that center flower from the mauve moon dust peel offs and also die cut that from some plain white cardstock. I glued those all together to make my 3 little flowers here. I curved up the edges of the petals and glued them all down on top of the label here as well. The extra inside pieces of that mauve moon dust I added to the card as little embellishments. That all works really well. Jump into spring, lots of shine on that card. Hippity hoppity, Easter's on its way. Now we only have 5 sentiments in this stamp set, so I have some room to create some sentiments of my own. And I was digging around looking for something that might be fun to go along with that gardening pattern paper. So for card number 6, this is on our zesty lime green card base. We've got gardening is my dirty little secret. Kind of a fun little pun there. I created this little sentiment, kind of ephemera piece using my Silhouette software and the Mona Lisa Solid ITC font. This is the Blackjack font, and this is the Rockwell Extra Bold font. I created that, printed that on a scrap of white cardstock, and then cut that down to a little square here. This is actually a little larger. This is like 2 1/4 inches by 2 3/8 inches. Almost a square, a little bit taller than it is wide. I took the extra flowers, all of these flowers from our sticker sheet, and added them to my little gardening sentiment and turned all of this into like a real bona fide ephemera piece. I really like this little layout. I die cut that gardening pattern paper with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, added a thin black mat behind that, then glued it down to my zesty lime card base. I added my gardening ephemera piece with some foam tape on top of that, sprinkled around some sequins and some of the hearts for a little sparkle on the front of this card. Finally, I thought it needed just a little bit more, so I took that wood veneer die cut of the flower and I embossed that like 3 or 4 times using that same pink sparkle embossing powder. I added a little clear gem right in the center there, glued that over the pink flower in our top arrangement here. Lots of shine, lots of sparkle, and gardening is my dirty little secret. We've actually grown cherry tomatoes on our windowsill here in New York City many times, although in recent summers we have gotten in trouble for that because we're not supposed to have anything on our windowsills. Boo! But we had some really good cherry tomatoes there for a few years. Now, I did take some time to stamp and color all of the egg stamps in our stamp set. I used VersaFine Onyx Black ink on Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I colored all of these with my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. Now, there's enough detail on these stamps to make for perfect embossings, but you know me, I do like losing myself in a long session of coloring. So let's use some of those eggs on a card. Again, on our lilac card base, we've got You're Extraordinary. I really like this card a lot. Of course, there's a couple of egg puns in our cut-aparts. I think You're Extra Special is one of them. I like You're Extraordinary to go along with this fun extraordinary card. I didn't put any hyphen there. I thought it read actually very nicely as EGGST. You're Extraordinary. I again created that sentiment using my Silhouette software software. This is the Rostilla font for the Ewer. This is the Stars and Stripe font from Silhouette for the Extraordinary. I will include links to all of the fonts I use in these cards on my website at cardcutups.com. So I printed this sentiment on a scrap of white cardstock, and then I die cut it with this is a Gina K largest oval die in her ThermoWeb oval dies. I die cut that with an oval die, and then I was debating whether to add a mat around that, whether to add nothing behind that, when I came up with the idea of making this little egg frame all the way around that oval. I told you I'm a little anal retentive sometimes. So I took our little bitty Easter egg die in our kit, and I die cut more of that pearlescent cardstock from the pearlescent pack. I die cut the green and the orange and the blue and the yellow, and then I glued them all around the edge of that oval, added their little centers in offset colors. That worked so nicely. I was very, very pleased with that. I cut a piece of this fun pastel plaid pattern paper to 4 inches wide by 5¼ inches tall, glued that down to my lilac card base. I added my oval with all the eggs to the front of that with some foam tape, and then I fussy cut the 3 more graphic colored Easter eggs from our stamps, added them to the center of our oval with some foam tape. Really pretty, kind of an extraordinary card. You're extraordinary. This would make a great thank you card, or a congratulations card, or even a fun birthday card. Anybody that's born around Easter would appreciate that. So let's look at these egg stamps with embossing instead of coloring. This is on the Buttercup Yellow card base, and we've got a Happy Easter card. My favorite part of this card is that when you first look at it, you don't really see the sentiment, but the sentiment is right there. Happy Easter, that Happy Easter egg-shaped sentiment in our kit. I stamped that on a panel of white cardstock using some Wilted Violet Distress Oxide ink and embossed that with some clear embossing powder. And then I added our egg stamps to either side of that and embossed those as well. We've got the Love From Lizi Neon Grapefruit here, the Neon Lime embossing powder right here. This is the Love From Lizi Cherry Red embossing powder here, and the Love From Lizi Neon Lemon embossing powder here. Once I embossed all those eggs, I fussy cut them out all as one piece. Now I took this egg pattern paper and I cut it to 3 inches by 5½ inches, glued that down to my card base, and then I added 2 3/8-inch strips of that pastel plaid pattern paper to the top and bottom of that, and then outlined everything with our glossy pink with silver peel-offs. Those egg stamps take the embossings perfectly, very beautifully, nothing messy. You don't have to color them. You can just emboss them in lots of fun colors and go to your Easter party like that. I finally foam taped my little egg strip to the center of this card. I didn't think we needed any extra sequins or sparkles on this at all. A nice Happy Easter card featuring a number of our egg stamps embossed. Now, we do have a Happy Easter die in our die pack this month, so that's actually a 3rd Happy Easter in our kit. Now, I don't have a Happy Easter die in my stash at all, so I was interested to try to use this, see how nicely it came out. This, again, is on that Buttercup Yellow card base, and we've got Happy Easter with my other 3 colored eggs on the top there. This card feels so much different than the others. Now I found some, this is Yellow Metallic Confections cardstock. This is a Tim Holtz craft-backed cardstock. It's, of course, kind of gold because it's yellow, but it's a very yellow gold. I thought that worked really nice. I die cut our Happy Easter from that metallic cardstock and die cut 3 more layers of that with white cardstock, glued them all together for a nice chunky sentiment. I die cut this piece of pattern paper with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I added a mat behind that of that same yellow metallic cardstock, glued that down to our buttercup yellow card base, and then glued my Happy Easter on top of that. I fussy cut my last 3 eggs and attached them with foam tape. A really nice Happy Easter card. This feels almost formal to me, but still very springy. We've got stained glass and yellow gold, daffodils and daisies. Happy Easter. So there were a few things that inspired this next card from me. First off, we have 6 by 8 inch pattern paper, which means we can cover more area than just an A2 card. Then we also have this lovely little ephemera piece that says bloom where you are planted. Now that made me think of this old card that I created many years ago, bloom where you are planted. That is an actual pop-up wipe card that pops up those big sunflowers at the top of this field. So I thought we could possibly use that ephemera piece and some of the flowers in our kit to do something very similar to this. But then I realized that this whole kit is called Make It Bloom. And if that isn't the perfect sentiment for a pop-up flower blooming card, I don't know what is. Make it bloom. So those were the ideas. I took our big sheet of those pink magnolias or roses, whatever they are, and I cut it in half. And this is going to be the front of our card. So we're not going to have a solid front. We're going to have just a solid back. We are going to make our little flower pop up about right there, so it'll hide behind and then it will pop up right there. So we're going to make it bloom. So these are both 4 1/4 by 7 1/2 inches long. I have 2 pieces of cardstock, and I did take the pattern paper that we got and I glued that to a thin piece of white cardstock just to give us a little extra sturdiness for this pop-up card. I wasn't sure if the thickness of our pattern paper would be enough to make this card work, so I went ahead and glued that down to some white cardstock and fussy cut this whole area out. I did take our back piece and I did softly blend some broken china distress oxide ink in the background here. That's going to be a background. That's going to be what the card will look like when it's popped fully open. Let's go ahead and make some scores on this and put this card together. So a pop-up wipe card like this has just basically a box inside there. So on one piece of our cardstock, we're going to score on the right side. On the front piece of our cardstock, we're going to score on the left side. So we'll start with our back piece. So we're going to turn it around so it's upside down here. 1 1/2, we're going to score on the front of our card. 1 1/2 on the front of our card. That's going to fold back and score 2 1/2. That's 1 1/2 and 2 1/2. We'll go ahead and fold that, commit the crease. I did that completely backwards. This should go forward. Pay no attention to what I'm doing. Only pay attention to what I say. So that's the proper way for our back to show up. Now, in putting this together, I took our sticker from our sticker pack and put that on some white cardstock. I fussy cut around that and added a little bit of a base here. That's about an inch extra base there. And then you take a 45-degree fold in the corner of that. So I just put a little bit of double-sided adhesive on the back of my pop-up piece here. I'm laying it down so it doesn't stick out from the bottom of the card, right up to the edge. Fold that over and then fold your flap on top of that. That should hold it. So with our front piece on here, that should pop up right there. Perfect placement. I think I'm going to put our sentiment stamp right here. Even when it's closed, it'll show up right there. I think that's just about right. Make it bloom, and that will come out and still show the Make It Bloom. So let's go ahead and stamp this on our background piece while we have the card unassembled. I am going to emboss this for just a little bit of shine, so I'll add some powder, some anti-static powder to that portion of the card. I'll use my VersaFine ink to ink up our stamp. Press that down. Since we're embossing it, we will stamp it a second time. Get plenty of that VersaFine ink there, and grab your clear embossing powder and add that to that sentiment. Looks like I have good coverage there. I warmed up my heat gun and will emboss this now. Quick and easy. Make it bloom nice and shiny. And there's our sentiment. That's our back piece. And then let's fold our front piece. So on this piece, we're going to score it on this side 1.5 and 2.5 inches. That's 1.5 and 2.5. This will fold forwards. This side will fold back. That's right, isn't it? No, it goes the other way. So we fold the first score mark forward and the second score mark back. There we go. So your two pieces should actually mirror themselves. But that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a little box there. And of course, that's not even my right piece. There we go. Okay, I think we have everything scored correctly. Let's add our little pop-up piece down here on the bottom. And we want to line this up with the score over here and keep that leaf from going out beyond the bottom of our card. So I've got a little bit of double-sided adhesive on this. Before we glue this, let's just check to make sure this all works correctly. This will glue to this will glue to the left, and we'll pop up like that. Make it bloom. I don't mind that I see just a tiny bit of my pop-up right behind there. It blends in, and then it pops up just beautifully. Okay, so that's where we want it. I'm going to pull off my double-sided adhesive on this tab, and we're going to add some glue to that. I'm using some Ranger multi-medium matte that's really strong, nice thick glue. It will hold in place and will keep it there for a long time. Just fold your Z shape over the top of that and hold that down. We're going to let that dry for a little bit before we assemble the rest of the card. Okay, I think that's good and dry now. That's where it's going to pop up. That's how it pops up. Let's put our two pieces together. Give it a little quick test before we glue it all down. There we go. Your flower pops up, pops down, pops up, pops down. Perfect. So let's glue these together. I want to glue the right side of this. That's 1.5 inches. So I'm going to stick that here in my score pal, and I'm just going to trace a quick little line down the 1.5 inch mark. So I know that I don't want to put any glue beyond that. That's just a quick reference there, so I don't get glue all over the place. Then we'll use liquid glue again. Again, I'm using my multimedia matte. Good, strong glue, quick setting all the way down the edges. And then we're going to glue that to our back piece, evening up the edges. That was good. I have no extra glue sticking out from the back. I think that's in place. This side is easy because we just need to glue this piece. A good amount of glue, though you don't have to overdo it. Then we'll glue this to the left side of the back, making sure the edges line up. Okay, let's let that dry for just a few minutes. Okay, everything is dried now, all glued down. This is our card. I have added some sequins from our sequin mix just for a little extra sparkle and shine on this card. Make it bloom. I really like how the sentiment shows between the flowers here and between the flowers there. I think that's great fun. And that, of course, is my last card for this kit. Make it bloom. I love the little pop-up action there. You give me a sentiment that says something is happening, and I'm going to try and make a card that makes something happen. So I'm making it bloom with this card. So much fun. Oh my goodness. So that's my 10 cards, 1 kit video featuring the Love From Lizi March 2021 Make It Bloom card kit. This is certainly a very springy collection with a few Easter cards. We've got a number of spring cards, some friendship cards, and thank you cards, and not too much terrible pink. I did manage to use every stamp in our stamp set. I thought my little stamp garland was particularly inspired. I used 10 out of our 12 pattern papers. I only have 2 pieces of pattern paper left that have not been adulterated in some way. I only used a few of our little pink peel-offs. But I did use a number of the stickers from our sticker sheet. The only thing I really didn't get to was our 12 by 12 cut apart tag sheet. I used a little bit of everything in our embellishment bag. I used every single die in the kit. I used some of the ribbon, some of the sequins, a number of the ephemera pieces. I even used a couple of pieces of our wood veneer die cuts. I just didn't quite get to those pre-tied white bows. All of these extras will find loving homes in my stash. I really had a great time creating all these cards. Whether you observe Easter or not, this is a great collection for celebrating spring and sharing a little seasonal rejuvenation with those you love. If you'd like my little gardening is my dirty little secret sentiment, send me an email at cardcutups@gmail.com and let me know if you'd like a copy of that file as a silhouette file or as a straight PDF. I'll be glad to share that with anybody. Now, as of posting, this kit is still available at Love From Lizi, along with most of the add-ons and the March releases. If I've managed to ignite your imagination or inspire an idea or two, please use my links in the description down below when you do go shopping with Lizi. Thank you so much for that. Your help is always appreciated. Thanks for sharing your time with me here today, folks. Your attention, support, and encouragement warms my heart on these cold winter days. Let's bring on some spring. Please remember to like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your friends. Don't run with gardening shears. Gardening shears. I send you and yours warmth and wellness, cheers and chuckles, and as always, happy crafting. Detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.